Hi, and welcome to my first bonus mini-series. As many of you know, I have spent the last several years studying the Enneagram, and I became a certified Enneagram coach early last year. Well, this is going to be a three-part, a basic introduction to the Enneagram. I have teamed up with my friend Cari over at Beacons of Bravery podcast, and we did kind of an interview style, just what you need to know, the down and dirty about the Enneagram and how it can help you be a more empathetic and compassionate person. So I'm looking forward to hearing what your thoughts are. Let me know if you want more information, more details about the Enneagram, because truthfully, I could talk about it a lot. So I hope you enjoy the next 3 episodes and tell me what you think. I'm interested in your questions and can't wait to answer them. Hi, friend. I am so excited that you're here to check out Her Restored Spirit podcast. If you've gone through something that has left you broken-spirited, maybe it's a divorce, loss of a spouse, or even a child, loss of a job, whatever it is, I know there is restoration in your future. I'm a widowed mom, and I remember what it feels like to emerge from the fog to discover that my loss is not the center of my story, but it actually instilled in me a new hope, a new understanding of faith, and a new strengthening in my heart, soul, and motherhood. I have finally understood that God has taken my test and formed it into my testimony, and that's why I'm here with you. I want you to step into your purpose, into a newfound joy, and to turn a new page in your book, because I believe you are on the brink of full restoration, unlocking a confidence that you didn't know was inside you, and understanding how to live more fruitfully with purpose, joy, and permission to be washed in possibility. It's time, friend, to reclaim your restored spirit.
Welcome back to the show, Tammy. Back by
Hi.
popular demand.
Thank you so much, and welcome to my show.
This
It'll
is
be
the
the
first time
that I have a guest on my show, so I'm really excited because that's what my next step with my podcast is that I'm going to have guests. So this is a good way to start.
Sweet. Well, we mentioned the last time you were on, and I'm sure your audience knows as well, that you are an Enneagram coach.
I am.
And I'd love to dig into that. I'm so excited for this little series that we're doing on the Enneagram.
Yes.
And specifically towards the end of it, we'll tweak it to be how what your Enneagram number is affects how you deal with fear and different things. So I can't wait to get started. And I think probably most people have heard the term now thrown out there, and it kind of is a weird sounding name. I thought, is this like a cult or something, when I first heard it? But could you give us just a brief 30,000 foot view of what the Enneagram is, kind of where it came about, and then I might have some follow-up questions.
Absolutely. So the Enneagram is it's kind of classified with all of the personality assessments and things, but it's very unique in that it is nature versus nurture. So when you're born with a specific number. But the part that it's different does it kind of, a lot of them, like the Myers-Briggs and all of the DISC and the StrengthsFinder, you use it and you can grow in certain areas, but it kind of puts you in a box of like, this is who you are. This is your traits. Well, the Enneagram actually will set you outside of the box, put you on top of the box, and gives you a framework. It's more of like a lens you see your life through, your personality through, and it's based on core motivation. So your core fear, your core longing, your core desire, and those core attributes are ingrained in you from when you were born. And then that's kind of the lens you see the world. So there's 9 Enneagram numbers. And another unique part is you're not stuck with one number. Like, and we will reference a lot. Like I'm an Enneagram 1 with a really strong 9 wing. And I also realize that I have a strong 2 wing as well. But that doesn't mean that I don't have traits of a 3 or a 6. You're actually a little bit of each number. It's just, what is your main type? Which which pair of sunglasses do you see all the other numbers through?
Oh,
And so
perfect.
that's the difference.
I love that analogy of the sunglasses. It's just kind of changing how you view the world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so is this just a new fad? Is this just something that somebody thought up, 2 years ago and ran with, or kind of go back a little bit more?
Right. No, when I first heard about it, I actually was very standoffish, because I'm like, what is this Enneagram, your number? And everyone, I don't get on board with fads really quickly. I'm behind the scenes. I'm usually a year or two behind trends, and I like to just bring up the rear and finish it off. And when it's long gone, that's when I like, oh yeah, I'm here. But I realized that in my field, when I was in therapy and as a coach, I realized that what we deal with a lot is how people see things, and it has actually been around for years and years and years. Like, it is ancient.
Mm-hmm.
And which you can see by just the symbol. It's an ancient symbol.
Mm-hmm.
And so no, it's not just a fad. Now, do I think it's really gaining momentum and being really popular right now? Absolutely. Which is also why it's important that you get your information in credible areas. Because as a coach, I've been a certified coach for over a year. I've studied the Enneagram for over 2, but I still don't know all of it. There's still things that I don't know. And and the experts that I trust all say the same thing of, they are very well read, but they are very leery and weary about giving specific answers. And because it's more about the growth process. And there's a lot of people who say they're experts, but really have not done their work. And so it's important that you look at the credible sources. And in the show notes, I can list some sources that I trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know what you mean by kind of gaining momentum. And, when people know your number or you throw around your number, then it can be almost like your label. Oh, that's so 3 of you. I mean, that's just but like you said, you're more than your number. It just helps you understand why you do the things you do. Absolutely. And why you don't do the things you should do as well.
It gives that answer of, why I want this. Why can I not do this? Well, it's usually based in fear. And when I went through and so I'm a type 1, like I mentioned, but which actually is common, I found out with type 1s. I took like every assessment possible because I did not want that. It resonated and I did not want to be a type 1. And the one thing that I learned, and another reason why I was so hesitant about the Enneagram at first, is it's so focused on negative traits, on what you do that's not healthy. And when I started studying it for real and realized the whole purpose of that is, one is it's so much easier for us to focus on the negative. We have a negative bias where we can do a million things good a day and mess up one time, or at the end of the day, we're going to focus on that one negative thing. So with that negative bias, it lends itself to, we can resonate with the negative side of the number before we start looking and give ourselves that freedom to look at the positive sides of the number.
Yeah.
And when I realized that, it kind of opened some doors. Yeah. It also showed me that some of the things that I thought were weaknesses, or that were my weaknesses, were actually my strengths and my superpowers that I have not stepped into yet. And I find with a lot of my clients, it's the same thing. Those things that scare you the most are the things that you need to do.
Oh, 100%. So we're going to kind of go into briefly describing the different numbers coming up, but you mentioned some assessments that you can take a test or whatever. Do you have any recommendations on the top of your head, or you want to save it for the show notes?
Sure, I can. There's 2 that I use. I got certified through a program called Your Enneagram Coach, and it's yourenneagramcoach.com, and they do have a free assessment. That one is faith-based, and so a lot of the questions and a lot of the information will be of the Christian faith. And then the other one that I really like is from the Enneagram Institute. It does cost $12, but it's $12 well spent. Like you will get a very detailed document. One thing that I want to tell you is that when you're taking the test, like you want to be in the right frame of mind. One is, do not judge yourself or your, it's a lot of it is like, it's a range between 1 to 5 or less likely, more likely, those kind of questions. You have to be non-judgmental. There is no bad number. There's no wrong number. It's just, it is what it is. And those, once you know, you can grow. And then when you're taking the test, think back when you were in your 20s. And the idea with that is we were a lot more intense in our 20s. We were a lot more, our feelings about things were more resolute. And the idea is as you grow, you kind of mellow and you kind of realize there's a lot more gray. And so things that like when you're 20s, you may like, no, always, this is how it is. And now that, in your 40s or however old you are, it may be like, no, I get that. Maybe, it's sometimes, but I can see how that's not always the right way, or I don't always think that way. So that's why it's good to think back in your 20s. And I've had friends who've taken it who said that what they did is they played the music that they loved from when they were in their 20s to really get into it and take it. But it takes about 40 minutes to take those 2 assessments, and you want to do it in one time.
And I've always heard the saying or the recommendation that you can't type somebody else, even though you may think, oh, that person is for sure a 9.
Right.
They have to, you can't answer for them, and especially not when they were in their 20s.
Absolutely. Well, and the idea behind that is you are more than your number. Like this is just a guide. This is not going to say who you are and what you stand for. And the other part about this is it's all about core motivations. This is the underlying and unsaid motivations that are deep inside of you that you may not even know yourself. And whereas a lot of like the Myers-Briggs and things are about behaviors. Well, you could have 9 people doing the exact same behavior, but for 9 different reasons. And that's why you cannot type people. And I will tell you that there's times that, there's like, oh, that is a 3 trait. I can recognize that. Or there's times that I really would like to know other people's numbers just because I feel like I can be more compassionate. And that's the other aspect of the Enneagram that I absolutely love is it's not just about knowing your number, but if you realize that you and we can see the same thing, but we see it with different glasses on. So mine may be a little bit darker, or yours may be a little bit more rosy, or, we're looking at the same thing, but through our own experience, through our own lenses, through our own fears. And so that's another reason you don't want to type people, but knowing their number or knowing all of the numbers helps you be a little more compassionate to, okay, they're reacting instead of responding. They're acting out of fear. I don't know, may not know what fear, but you can at least have compassion and understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, 100%. And just realizing not everybody thinks like I think,
Right.
That's a big thing. People's behaviors can drive you crazy. And then you find out, oh, they're a 3, they're driven to perform and achieve. I mean, 3s to me are pretty easy to spot, but again, we don't want to
yes. And a 3, just for the listeners who are not used to is a successful achiever. And so, they want success, and they will, for the most part, do whatever they need to do in order to get it. And, but a lot of these, as you know, the traits are easier to spot. But then it also allows you to see, okay, this is why they're saying what because they want to appear successful. Their fear is, being exposed or incompetent. And so they're going to act out that. So maybe they act in a way that's like, wow, that's a little obnoxious. And, it's not just 3s that are obnoxious. Every number can be obnoxious. But they would be, then you can understand, oh, they are fighting, whatever their battle they're fighting, this is what they need to appear as. And so you can speak to that, and you can speak life to them and say, hey, I like you for you. It doesn't matter how successful you are.
Right. So let's dive right into the good stuff.
Yes.
So let me ask you, do you want to start with 1, or do we want to do the groupings of 3? How do you think we can best talk about the different types?
I think that we should do the groupings, since our focus for this workshop is just to kind of give a highlight and an overview. And so I think what we'll do is in this episode, let's focus on the gut triad. So we'll do 8, 9s, and 1s, and we'll talk about them a little bit more. And then we can, when we talk about paths and things, like we can go into a little bit deeper, or again, we'll have to do another podcast and talk about it a little more deep, because there's so much here. It's so fun.
Okay, so let's start with your number. And I'll just be honest with the audience. I have read books on this. I've taken assessments, and I still am not exactly sure if I'm a 9 or a 1. Whichever one I am, I have a very strong other side. And so when I kind of go through the lens of my 20s, I would say I was more 1 with a strong 9 wing, whereas now I identify really strongly as a 9. So anyway, this is your number and possibly my number. Right. So let's go into, what is the 1?
Yes. So the 1 is the moral perfectionist. And the idea behind the 1 is that their fear is being wrong, or being evil, or bad, inappropriate, unredeemable, or corruptible. And so 1s really they want to be good. They want to do things right. And it's not just for them, but it's for the good of society. A 1 is a great number to have in a group, because they really can look and push things through and make sure that what's going on is ethical, and make sure that things are done properly. At the same time, you can see how that also can be a hindrance, because one thing that characteristics a 1 is the inner critic. So there's other, the voices in your head. The voice in your head for a 1 is unique. That none of the other ones have it as the same way a 1 does. So the inner critic, and it's called that for a reason, because 1s, they can walk into a room and see every problem immediately. They can spot every inconsistency. They can spot anything that's wrong, out of place. They can see ways to fix it. They know in their heart the best way to do things. Are they always right? No, but we try. But the idea is and the voice is so loud that for it's 1s can seem very judgmental. But the idea is it's not as judgmental as you would think. It's more because we want to be the best version of ourselves, but we also want you to be the best version of you. And so your 1s are bossy, but they come at it with love. And as I read and as I study my own number, because I am a 1, and like I said, I took multiple tests because I'm like, I don't want to be this. I don't want to be this bossy know-it-all. But then I realized the gifts that I offered. And I started to embrace the high side, the healthy side of 1, and realizing that though I need to learn to calm my inner critic and realize that a lot of what it says is lies, or it's not necessarily something I need to listen to. It's just the fears that keep me stuck. But it's also the gift that I can offer, because I can see problems that are going to arise, or that are, if we go into a situation, I can typically see where the problem is and see a way to fix it. Or at least be able to talk it through with somebody who is more capable than me to fix it.
That doesn't sound so much like me. Usually I sit back and let somebody else solve the problem.
Okay, which is very 9.
Yeah, I know. But you mentioned when we were first introducing this, that every number has a core motivation, or
yes.
So what is a 1's core motivation?
So the core motivation is having integrity, being good, balanced, accurate, virtuous, and right.
Rule follower, right?
Rule follower.
And want
Yes.
other people to be the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not just, it's like for the good of society, which I say that because when we get to talk about number eights, eights are very much, they're rule followers, but it's based on their perceptions of how things should be.
Okay.
And so ones are for the outward, whereas eights is more for inward. And we'll talk about why when we get to eights.
Okay.
But the core desire that ones want to hear is that you are good. And so that's what drives them, because they want to be good. They want to be good at what they do. They want to be seen as someone who is moral and someone who is honest and can be trusted. And so sometimes in order to get that, we are more forceful than we need to be.
Yeah.
But then again, that's as we go on our health path, as we grow, then we can allow that to mellow a little bit and realize that we can be good for reasons outside of our actions.
Yes. I think that's a good place to stop and go over to the next number, because you just put a pretty little bow on that.
Absolutely. Let's now number nines. We'll just work backwards.
Okay.
And so 9 is the peaceful mediator. So this is the number that goes along to get along. And their core fear is being in conflict, tension, or discord, feeling shut out or overlooked, losing connection with and relationships with others. So with a 9, it's so important to be seen and heard, but it's also fearful to be seen and heard, because what if they are overlooked, or what if they cause someone else pain? So a lot of times your 9s, which one of the superpowers of a 9 is the wisdom that they carry. When you walk into a room and you have a conversation, and those people that you just feel completely seen by, that you feel like your soul is heard by talking to them, whether they knew you or not. Typically that is a 9 that you have encountered. And that is, their core longing is to have inner stability and peace. So they will do whatever they can to have peace in their life. And their core desire is to be heard and seen and know that their presence matters. And so sometimes with a 9, you have to actually step back when you're with a 9 and realize, as much as you've been seen and heard, that's what you need to do for them as well. You need to stop and you need to listen to them as well, because that's their core. They're giving you what their heart is. And sometimes 9s take a long time to get to things. They talk around in circles, but
I'm a 9. Okay. And
I'm not typing you, but I agree.
Oh, good. I feel better now. Now
you feel seen and heard.
Yeah, I do. Totally. So I've heard this before and I can totally relate. I'll go 2 different places. One is you mentioned walking into a room. I can take the temperature of everybody and how they're feeling.
Absolutely.
And if there's any tension at all, I feel it myself.
Yes.
Is that common?
That's very common. So that's another superpower of a 9 is they can walk in and they actually have the ability to, and again, it's not, you have to develop it and you have to recognize it. And, and every number can do this, but it's more natural for a 9. But 9s actually can see things from other people's perspectives. They can remove themselves from the situation and their fears from the situation and really just look at what frustrations or what you're feeling. And so a 9, typically you walk into a room and you can read the room immediately and feel the energy and understand what's going on and know what people need in that moment.
This is the other thing that I've heard about 9 that I relate with, and it's that tendency to, I'm going to call it merge with other people. So like my whole life, and I'm sorry, I'm going on about a 9, but
No, that's
Great number.
what this is for.
I've been that peacemaker, kind of a more timid person, I would say, but I've always merged and been attracted to very strong personality types. Like I'm like a parasite that latches onto them and gets my strength from them, you know? Is that something that's common?
Yes. So merging, I think, is a little bit,
I don't know if
I don't know if I would use that word.
Yeah.
I think that's more of a 3. Where they become the number that's around them. They adapt to whatever is in the room. I would say a 9. Typically you fall asleep to your own desires, but because you feel someone else what they need and you're willing to give it, you kind of lose yourself and just mirror what they are doing and what they're going through and their what their likes are. And so in order to keep the peace and you don't want to cause conflict, it's easier for you to like the Julia Roberts movie about the Runaway Bride, you know how the eggs, right? That's a perfect example of she didn't know what type of eggs she wanted.
Yeah.
So she liked whatever eggs the other person had. And it didn't mean that she liked it. She just was asleep to herself and did not consider her thoughts and feelings and needs. She's like, well, it's eggs. It's not a big deal. And so that's how I see the 9s is it's not that it becomes their desire, but their desire falls asleep. And so they just take on whatever and just accept it.
Yeah.
And because they want to go along to get along.
Totally can relate to that. And I think you explained that well. The other thing that I've heard, and I experienced this, is that when you're reading or hearing about the different types, a 9, which is what I do, is I see myself, I'm like, oh, that's me. Oh, that's me. Oh, that's me. With every type except 8. I see the 8 and I'm like, that is not me. But
which is interesting because that's your wing. Like an 8 is, the 9, you have a 8 wing and a 1 wing.
Yeah. So. But is that common? Like a 9 can see them, you're kind of like, it's just that you sense everything and you kind of take it all on.
Yes. And again, that's because you have adapted, you have, you're not as in tune to your own needs and desires and your preferences as much as you are in tune to everyone else's. And so it's and a lot of 9s, and I've worked with several that when we start to get down to things and I'm like, well, what do you want? Or what do you feel here? And it really takes them a while and a long time to really get to the bottom of, oh, I'm allowed to have an opinion here.
Yeah.
And then figure out what it is because they've never actually done that. And part of that is because they're so in tune to everyone else and pouring out that a lot of 9s, if you don't do the self work, then you're pouring out and you're actually drained and empty for yourself. And you may not know yourself at all.
Yeah. Yep. That's exclamation point right there.
Well, and then to go a step further is people don't see it because you're still pouring out and you're still so focused and helping other people be seen. So if you have a 9 friend, check on your 9 friend and sit and listen to him or her and just.
Now call me.
Right.
My friends call me. Okay. So now let's go on to my least understood number. Just because I just can't relate, but let's go on to the 8s.
Yes. So the 8 is the protective challenger. So the 8s are the strongest mentally. Like, and again, if they don't do their, there is paths, which we won't get into it now because of the time constraint, but there's a growth path and a stress path and a blind spot and a convergence path. And so there's also levels of health. And so with an 8, the more unhealthy they are, the harder they are to deal with and the harder they are to be around. And the more forceful that they feel they should become. And so the protective challenger
characteristics.
Yes. So their fear is being weak, powerless, harmed, controlled, vulnerable, manipulated, and left at the mercy of injustice. So injustice is really what the core is. And they a lot of times will control to avoid being controlled. Now, this type 8, again, you hear the negative side, but these are the people who stand up and start nonprofits. These are the people who stand up and, fight injustice and fight the horrors that go on in this world. So we need 8s. We need this strong personality. And a lot of them don't really care what you think of them, which also is important because we need people like that who are good and to fight for the little guy. They fight for the underdog. And so, it's important. But with that, they are also, as much as they are tough on the inside, they are incredibly sensitive. And a lot of them are not in touch with that. And so they are protecting themselves and those in their inner circle. And so that's their core desire, is they want to protect. So you can tell when you want to be protected, you put on armor and you make yourself appear bigger and stronger so that people don't see that weakness that you perceive as weakness.
I know we're not supposed to type other people, but I know I have some 8s in my life. Can you, off the top of your head, think of somebody maybe famous that we might know who would fit the description of an 8? A leader, somebody who takes up a cause, anything like that?
So I should have realized you were going to ask this question and I should have looked it up. I believe, and I believe Christine Kane, and she is the leader of A21. I believe she is an 8, and I think she's said it, publicly that she's an 8. I could be wrong, and if I am, I'm sorry. On the top of my head, but I would assume that she would be because of her role with, fighting sex trafficking and how she is this tiny, adorable little fireball who is heading head on against these big, mean people that are doing horrible things to other humans.
Yeah. Yeah, she definitely, I think I've heard her say that too, but she definitely is the healthier side of an 8. Working for a good cause. There's also, when they're not in health, they can be they can dominate
and dominate. Yes. And unfortunately, a lot of people are probably do that because they don't know what to do with their energy. One thing about an 8 is the intensity level is they don't know how to go lower. They don't trust themselves, or they don't feel that they don't want to be vulnerable, and they don't want to be controlled. And if they don't come up as big and strong and forceful, then that adds the vulnerability. And that, even though we see that vulnerability is really a strength, it's also really scary. And so, and I would say 8s who are unhealthy could be really dangerous.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned compassion when you know somebody's number, and that has helped me a lot with the 8s in my life, because it's almost like I can picture them as a scared little child underneath, but they're putting on this bravado, or, there's all different types, but it does help with compassion. And then also realizing they're strong, I've saddled myself next to a lot of 8s in my life, like I was saying, because they'll bulldoze and I'm just along for the ride.
That is a common characteristic. That's a lot of times 8s are, when you hear about the Enneagram, bulldoze is something that is typically said about the 8, that they're bulldozers.
So you mentioned when we went into these first 3 numbers that this was the gut triad. I mean, like you said, it can get real complex, but what does that really mean? There's 3 triads, you know? So what does that mean, the gut triad?
So there's the heart, the head, and the gut triad. And so one of the characteristics, and a lot of times, like if you are, when you're trying to figure out your number, and maybe a lot of people don't like the assessments, and that's okay. You can actually figure it out by, process of elimination. And the first thing you start with is the triad. And you start, so gut, meaning that your gut leads. So your gut feeling takes precedent over your heart or the way you're feeling or the way you're thinking. Your gut intuition is really strong. And that is one area in me, like I know when I read that the gut, I was like, yes, because I have really strong gut feelings about things that are typically correct. And that's the way I perceive things. Now, again, as you start to get healthy and you realize, you start to bring your heart and your head more into it and more balanced. And I have working on doing that. But if I feel it in my gut that something is happening or something's right or wrong, typically that's what I listen to. And so that is the 8s, 9s, and 1s have really good gut intuition.
So I wonder what that means, because I feel that, and I would say that I have good gut instincts, or I have gut instincts.
Okay.
But I will override them sometimes. And it has
really
put me in a world of hurt sometimes. So it's just strange. Yeah, I guess either my mind or heart is overriding. I don't know which, but yeah, strong. I know deep down I should go this way, but sometimes I go the other way instead. Is that weird?
Everything's weird.
Oh,
no. And that's one thing that as you learn that is your instinct, your main instinct, and then you don't have to be scared of it. Again, you do need to check with your head and your heart. You shouldn't only be led by your gut, because that's never safe. And people who do that also make rash decisions. But if you have those intense feelings, like that's there by nature. Like that is there as a way to lead you and guide you. And that is, and that's just something that you should be aware of. And when you get a gut instinct about it, you can learn to appreciate that instead of be like, oh, I'm feeling this way, but I'm going to go this way. You're like, well, why? Let me use my head and my heart to figure out if the gut instinct is correct, instead of just be like, nope, I'm doing this way, even though it's opposite of what my gut is saying. But sometimes it does lie. You get bad information, we are humans. So
we don't want to run super long this time, but I think maybe a good way to end out this episode before in future episodes in this workshop, we'll go into the other 6 numbers. If you could just briefly tell us which numbers are the heart triad and which are the head or brain, or
sure.
what you call it.
Yep. So I will talk a little bit about like the triads in general. So the 3, you have the gut triad, which is the 8, 9, and 1. And so that's the instinctive center. And their emotional struggle is anger, which as a 9, I'm sure that you're like, no, I'm not angry. I like peace. Right. And that's something we can go into later as well. But anger is the emotional struggle. Yeah. And then also the common desire is justice. We want it to be, we do it for the good of people. We do it for, it's more than just ourselves. And so that's what the gut triad, the basics of the gut triad.
Yeah. Okay.
And so the next is the heart triad, which is also the feeling center. And that is 2, 3, and 4, which we will talk about a little bit more in depth next episode. And their emotional struggle is shame. Shame. Yes. And that is something that, that plagues them, that shame. And their common desire is significant identity. They want to mean something, which goes along with, when you want to mean something and then you feel shame, whether you are, you're confident in it or you are not doing what you should be doing. So you can see how those play a part. As same with as anger and justice, like those two go hand in hand as well.
Right.
And then the third is the head triad, the thinking center. And they are 5, 6, and 7s. Okay. And one of the things, their emotional struggle is anxiety. So they are anxious about things, about research and what's going to happen, worst case scenarios, best case scenarios. They are very in tune with the world around them, and it plays a part. And if they don't learn to get a hold of that anxiety, then it does rule them. And their common desire is security. They want that safe and secure environment, which also plays into anxiety, because if you are not safe and secure, you are anxious, you know, and striving for that. So that's the overview of the triads.
So as people are listening to this, they might, like I do, and maybe it's the 9 in me, is you just mentioned, you know, all these things. And I'm like, well, I'm all of that. I'm anxious. I'm, you know, all this, I have shame. But what I want to kind of tie it back to what you said in the beginning, which was we're all a bit of all of them. We just have one stronger, right? Is that how you would describe it?
Yes. We have one main type, those main sunglasses that we put on. And then there's a thing called paths. And I know if you are not, the lingo of the Enneagram is like, it's a whole nother language, and people start throwing out acronyms and things, and it goes crazy. So I'll stay very basic, but there's the paths. And so like a type 1, when they're in stress, they actually can take on traits of like a type 4. And then like the type 9, when they're in stress, they go towards the type 6. And so if you realize that you are, which the type 6, their core feeling is anxiety itself and fear itself. And so that plays a part of when you are stressed, in order to gain that peace, you are very anxious about it. And so you'll see that, and that's more how you can become parts of the numbers, and how there's so much more than, you're not just a 1 or you're not just a 9. You are, 9 on top of the box. And then you have your wings, which is the number to the left and to the right. Then you have your paths. And so even with that, you have a little bit of everything, but your main type is this pair of sunglasses that you have on first. And then the others are just the flavor that add to your personality.
Oh, I like how you describe that. Well, as we come to the end of this episode, is there anything else that we kind of need to wrap it up, what we're going to? And I'm sure the audience is really looking forward to, if they haven't heard their number yet, they're going to look forward to the next 2 episodes to learn more about their number.
Absolutely. So one of the things is, send us questions. If I said something, or if you asked something that resonated, like DM us one, either me or you, Cari, and we will make sure that we address them. And I, like I said, I'm an Enneagram coach. I love talking about this. I have grown personally from using this. And I, unlike a lot of the personality assessments, like I feel that I've actually grown and become healthier by understanding my core fears and realizing that sometimes I react in ways I don't want to. But now that I recognize, oh, this is a fear response, I can take a step back and then I can respond instead of react, which has made a world of difference. And so if you have questions, just reach out to us, please, because we can't address everything in this, and we don't know what your questions are.
Right.
But if you want to talk more about us, reach out as well, and we can talk more about helping you find your number. If you don't want to take an assessment, there's ways to do it, talk through and find your number.
And I mean, you've said a couple of times you're a certified Enneagram coach. Yes. And you tell us how you use that in your coaching. You have the person take an assessment, and then with that in mind, you help them navigate whatever they're going through.
Absolutely. So the first thing to recognize is, when you take the assessment, it's just that. It's kind of giving you a broad spectrum. It's giving you an idea. You may automatically say, yes, this resonates with me completely. It typically gives you the top 3 numbers. And so you can be one of those 3 typically, not always. Sometimes it's completely wrong. When you're doing it, it's good to talk it through, and it's good to understand that you're not going to resonate with everything that they say on the paper or on the number, because you are unique. And this is not meant to put you in a box. One of my really good friends is another 1, and her and I, though we share the common fear, And it's really funny because we both were like, oh, my one is showing again, or, oh, that's a one response. We have that core fear that's like, but we respond in very different ways. So you wouldn't even know that we both were ones unless you knew us and you knew that. But so I think, did I answer that question?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
and so I'm just going to encourage people, if you're intrigued with the Enneagram and you also need some coaching in some area of your life, it's a really good way to go to somebody, a coach, an Enneagram coach, who, knowing your number, can help you navigate
absolutely
what you're going through better.
Well, and now I remember the question is, how do I use this? And it's because if you understand your fears and you really start to look at them and be gentle with yourself and ask yourself why, then you can start to heal. You can start to grow, and then you can start to step out of the fear because now you know what it looks like. For me, realizing that I don't want to mess up. Like I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to seem prideful, which has kept me from really stepping into my identity for so long. But when I realized that that's just my fear and realized, okay, I don't have to be perfect because no one is. And the people I talk to, they like me for me, not because I'm so good.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to see that, identify it, and then move forward. It allows me to take those small action steps in order to get the life that I want. And they're still there. Those fears are still in the back of my mind, but now I can recognize, and that's what I do for my clients, is we identify the fears and we really see, how has this been holding you back? And what life do you want? And how do you get it? By stepping through the fears and using them as a power instead of a weakness.
And I know that's the theme of my show, and it's really the theme of your show as well. It doesn't matter where you've been, what you've been through, you have this life out there that you want to live, and you're stuck in some way. This can help be a path through.
Absolutely. Yeah. Since this episode is actually going to be on my show as well as yours, why don't you talk about your podcast for a moment?
Okay.
And tell us where my people can find you.
Well, it's called Beacons of Bravery. And if you're listening in one of my audience, you're like, that. But anyway, because fear is something that I have struggled with, like anybody, most of my life. Fear of public speaking, fear of all this kind of stuff, fear of being seen. I do not like to be seen, out there, flashy, whatever. It's held me back in a lot of ways. And then I would see other people out there, maybe they're 8s or whatever, that were real strong. And I always wondered, how are they doing it? But realizing that everybody has to overcome fears. So on this show, I interview, and Tammy was a guest earlier, people who have either worked through their fears, overcome obstacles in order to be moving towards that life of their dreams. And they are the beacons that show the rest of us the way through it. So that's it in a nutshell. And Tammy's podcast is...
It's called Her Restored Spirit. And I want to help women who've been through hardships. It's some men as well, but it's geared more towards women and moms. But, I'm a widowed mom, and I have really had to step into my identity, and I've had to embrace the hard things that I've been through to get the life that I want. And so I using my marriage family background, marriage family therapy background, and being an Enneagram coach, I'm a restoration and confidence coach. And my goal for my podcast is just to give little tidbits of how you can start to restore your spirit, how you can start to step into the confidence and the identity that you desire and that you deserve, and really have the life that you want. So you take the people from yours, and I give them tips on how to do it.
Yeah. So I hope everybody in both of our audience gets used to our voices together, because we're going to be doing lots of duo episodes, just because what we do goes hand in hand. So as we bring this to the close, I really want to thank you, Tammy. You have shown the light on the Enneagram, and I know our audience is looking forward to the next 2 episodes in this workshop. and then whatever in the future that we decide to talk about.
Well, and I just want to thank you for doing this with me as well. This is something that I wanted to do, and talking about like, how do I present it to my people? And I just like the conversation part. So I appreciate you jumping on this bandwagon, or jumping on this workshop, and really talking about what the Enneagram is and what we both do.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for listening in, and stay tuned to parts 2 and 3. Hope everybody goes out and has a great day.
Hey friend, I hope you loved today's episode. I hope you start to claim the confidence to walk in a judgment-free zone as you continue this healing journey. Now, I want to invite you to look into working with me. I'm a full-time restoration and confidence coach with a background in marriage and family therapy. And not only that, but friend, I've walked it. As you heard in my story, I've experienced grief, loss, pain, feeling stuck. I've had the desire to break free from the fog and rise up again after the hurt, after the pain, and move out of the grief cycle, to begin to wake up with purpose again and live a life of meaning, and kind of rediscover who I was before the grief while I was uncovering who I'm becoming. And I have been called to help you with the same thing. So if you feel you're ready to step back into the light, wash away the old, not forgetting the past, but stepping into a new position of purpose, confidence, and identity, I would love to be your coach and mentor through the process. I only take a few clients each month and would love to get you on the calendar to help you navigate this journey. Email me at tammy@tammymurraycoaching.com. Until then, I'll meet you here next week with another awesome topic to help you claim the life that you desire. Don't forget to take a screenshot, tag me, share on Facebook and Instagram, and please share this with another broken-spirited mom who is in need of some soul restoration. Don't forget to rate and review, and until next time, take a deep breath and know there is hope. Bye, friend.